everybody. This is Jimmy Smith. Welcome to another episode of the Biblical Business Leaders Podcast. Really excited to be talking to you again today. It's been, it should be the third week in a row, so I'm glad to be back in the swing of it with the different list of ideas that I have. And I'm just trying to do one a week as much as I can, but also to bring you quality stuff. So if I miss a week here or there, I apologize, but I don't want to just force out an episode for you. So excited for this week. We're going to be talking about delegation and outsourcing. In some of the coaching and whatnot that I do, I see a lot of people that really struggle with this. And so I'm going to be talking about three things. Really, first, why do we not delegate? Then second, biblical examples of delegation and really how to do it. And then third, practical suggestions to delegate. But for anybody that's new here, I did want to, again, point out that, hey, we do have a Facebook group where we can discuss these topics. We can get together and fellowship on all these different things. And so if you want to go ahead and join that, there's a link in the description, or you can go to facebook.com and look up Biblical Business Leaders, and the Facebook group should pop up for you. Also, if you haven't left a review for us yet, I really appreciate it if you could go and do that. That helps with the algorithms with Apple Podcasts and all the other different podcast players. So if you can leave a review, that would just help to spread the word a little bit more. But before I go ahead and get into today's topic on delegation and outsourcing, let's start with a prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the opportunity to have podcasts where I can come on here and discuss different topics revolving around the Bible and around business, two very important topics to you, and really how both of those things interact. Thank you for the opportunity for me to be able to do that, and for everyone on here listening now and in the future. I pray that this podcast blesses their business and their life and their spiritual faith walk with you. And that ultimately your words come through me, and that everything that I say here leads people back to the Bible and back to the message of the gospel. And so I thank you again for this opportunity, for everything that you've brought into all of our lives on this podcast, and for the opportunity to grow spiritually and from a business standpoint. Thank you so much, and we pray all this in Yeshua's name. Amen. So let's go ahead and get into it. Like I said, I'm going to break down three things. So why do we not delegate? Or at least different things that I've seen over the past couple of years in my coaching that I've done for why people typically don't delegate. The next one would be biblical examples of delegation. And then lastly, practical suggestions to delegate. So why do we not delegate? Besides a lack of money, which is obviously a clear one, right? If you don't have the cash flow or the money available to delegate to somebody else, that can be a very scary thing to take that leap, or you just might not be able to. Now, there might be arguments depending on the business that if you delegate, you can make more money elsewhere because you're delegating or offloading tasks that, maybe you can offload for $15 an hour and you can make $100 an hour doing something else. So if that's the case, then it still might be worth it for you to delegate. But I understand if there are periods of time when you don't have the money to outsource things, that could be something that could hold you back for good reason. But the other most common reasons that I see besides the cash flow issue is it typically comes down to a matter of trust. So not just trusting somebody else to do the job, but trusting God that he's going to take care of your business if you delegate something and it went wrong, right? A lot of that goes back to fear. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. But first and foremost, I think the biggest issue for people not delegating is that we fail to plan. So we fail to plan that, how do we delegate first and foremost? What are the things that we're doing in our business that can be offloaded to somebody else to do them at least as close as possible to being as if we were to do them ourselves? So, a lot of times I expect if it's a task that 90% of what I do, if somebody else does it to 90% as good as what I've done, then that's completely worth it to delegate it, especially if it's a lower level task. Most of the time, the people you delegate to that will start to specialize in that task will actually become better than you at doing that specific task. So I know it's a scary thing. Whenever we first started outsourcing our business, we now have 12 employees, but we were really scared to offload some of those tasks like prepping and shipping or shopping for our business and buying and contacting suppliers or going to stores. So there's a lot of different things that can really start to build up from a fear standpoint. But if you fail to plan, the different things in your business that can be outsourced, then you're going to ultimately fail to ever take action and outsource those things. And you'll be constantly, in that rat race of just going back and forth, doing the same things over and over, and your business won't be able to grow because of that. Now, delegation does require some foresight. So, you're not trying to recruit somebody at the last minute and dump everything onto them that you can't handle. You're trying to delegate things with successful communication. And by doing that, that means you need to have the right amount of time dedicated to it. You need to devote time in your business to be able to properly offload something to somebody else so that they can pick it up as quickly and smoothly as possible. So you're going to need to set aside time in your business, and I'll get to that a little bit more in the end, but set aside time in your business to think ahead to the issues that they might face, to all the different things that you have to go through, each step by step that you have to go through to be able to offload that one task to somebody. The next reason people have issues with delegating or outsourcing is that we're kind of proud, right? We think nobody else can do this better than we can. Ultimately, it's pride cometh before the fall, right? We get into this place where, I can't offload this task because I'm the only one that can do this the right way, which is just not true. 99% of the things in your business, that's not true. There are other people that can do that task. Now, there might be tasks that should only be done by you, or should mainly be done by you, but that having the mindset of you're the only one that can do that is something that you would need to look at within yourself. And it's something that I have issues with whenever I'm trying to outsource stuff, like, nobody else can do this but me, which isn't true. So start thinking about everything in your business, how you can start to delegate that out to other people so that you aren't having to do everything moving forward. And even the important tasks. I mean, there's a reason that there's, different CEOs, CFOs, COOs, all of those higher level management jobs in large companies, is because those higher level jobs can be done by a specialist and probably do it better than one person that's trying to do all of that at one time. So you're just trying to think of your business in the terms of, how can I start to delegate and outsource different tasks? What are all the tasks that I'm doing in my business? Let's start with the lower level ones and move up. But ultimately, doing that, starting with the lower level ones, seeing that you can trust people, will start to allow you to open up your horizons to see that, okay, I can trust other people to do jobs. I can start to promote from within. I can start to really trust other people to take over higher level tasks as well in your business. And then the last thing that I would say is that we're scared, right? There's a lot of fear that comes from delegating and outsourcing. My podcast, episode 13 that I did on fear, would go into great lengths on kind of the fear of the Lord versus fearing the world and having anxiety in the world of just being scared and not trusting God ultimately with your business, with the decisions that you're making. So that is probably the biggest one. Even though I put it third, it's the biggest one out of all three, because you get to the point where you don't fully trust God to take care of us, even if things go wrong. And ultimately, having the fear of the Lord and trusting God fully for your business is what's going to, even if things did go wrong, you'd still have that same faith, that same trust that God's got you, right? If you hire somebody and you outsource something and they just really messed it up, like really bad, then that's probably the worst case scenario, but God's still got you, right? If you're trusting in him and you're allowing him to run your business, you surrender every second to serving God in your business. Ultimately, he knew what was going to happen. He knew that there were going to be an issue with that one person or that one activity, that task that was going to go wrong. So he's got you in your business. So there's no reason really to be scared, because if things go wrong, God's still got you in it. And ultimately, delegating and bringing other people into your business is a very biblical model. And so let's get into some biblical examples, but it's a very biblical model. So when you get to the point of delegating, you shouldn't be worried about, having issues crop up in your business because you let go of control. That's something that God would typically want you to do, to bring other people into it, to have your business bless more people and serve more people and be a bigger message of the gospel to more people. So delegating in your business is a great thing if you've got the the trust in God, and also depending on the situation, if you have the cash flow to be able to fund somebody else coming into your business, or the opportunity that if you were to pay for somebody else to do a task, you can make more money and grow the business elsewhere to help it grow and prosper moving forward. So the best biblical example is in Exodus 18, where Moses' father-in-law Jethro came to visit after Moses had led the Israelites out of slavery. And Jethro saw a lot of things that Moses was doing and realized that this wasn't sustainable from a spiritual standpoint, from just a leadership standpoint, that he needed to start to delegate things. And Jethro gave very practical advice, not just for Moses, but from a leadership standpoint, from a company. Looking at it thousands of years later, we can follow a very similar model. And so there was actually a really good breakdown that I found on this chapter from michaelhyatt.com. And so I'm actually going to go through his, I believe it's 5 different things that he broke down about what Jethro told Moses. So there's 5 different principles that are relevant today, just as much as they were back when they were said. So the first one that Michael Hyatt goes through is admit that working nonstop is unsustainable. Jethro told Moses, the thing that you do is not good. Both you and these people who are with you will surely wear yourselves out. For this thing is too much for you. You are not able to perform it by yourself. So the reason that he was saying that is because Moses was handling all these different conflicts that kept arising with all the different people, all the different Israelites that came out of Egypt. And so Moses unintentionally became a workaholic. And Jethro here was telling him that, hey, working nonstop is unsustainable. You need to realize this. Something eventually would break down in that process. And so for you now, practically, if you're working 12, 15-hour days, 6, 7 days a week, that's going to eventually lead to a breakdown in your business and your personal life and your spiritual life, etc. Something will eventually give, whether it's your health, your sanity, your family, anything, right? The more that you try to push that and you try to rely on yourself to operate your business or be a leader in whatever organization you might be in, it begins to break down eventually. So ultimately, that strategy won't work very long term. And if it does last for a long time, it will start to affect your health from a stress standpoint anyway. So then the second thing that Michael Hyatt discusses is understand your unique calling. So Jethro saw something extremely important, that while Moses could perhaps do many things well, he had a unique calling where he alone added significant value. And what he said to Moses was in verses 18:9 and then 20 was, listen now to my voice. I will give you counsel, and God will be with you. Stand before God for the people, so that you may bring the difficulties to God, and you shall teach them the statutes and the laws, and show them the way in which they must walk, and work they must do. So Moses needed to offload these things that other people could do. Now, I might say within the organization, but within the nation of Israel, but you can apply it to an organization. You need to offload those things that other people can do so that he could focus on the things that only he could do. So the same would be true for you. The same would be true in any organization. Where is it that you add value, something that you are uniquely called and qualified to do, and how can you delegate the rest of those activities? The third thing was select qualified leaders to assist you. So this is where it starts to begin to get more practical, where there's practical advice. He even said to Moses, you're not the only one who can do this, essentially. So in verse 18, 1a, moreover, you shall select from all the people able men, such as fear God, men of truth, and hating covetousness. So notice here that the focus is on the character of those people. It's not just on the tasks that they have to offload. It's on the character. It's on selecting the right people that are within the same, spiritual ideologies, the same mindset on how to view God. So, everyone that you bring into your organization can gain knowledge and gain experience. They can learn skills. They can develop their gifts. But ultimately, you must start with the foundation of a godly character and making sure that, you're on the same page whenever it comes to that. It's much easier to delegate if you're on the same page from a spiritual standpoint. Now, I understand that in today's world, it's kind of difficult to figure that out, but you can usually tell somebody's character. It doesn't mean that they have to be the same denomination as you, or even the same, they don't have to be a Christian. While it might be best if you have that in common, they don't have to be. So you can't exactly ask that in an interview, but you can tell people's truthfulness. You can tell if they're hard workers. You can tell the character qualities that they have whenever you're interviewing or looking at a resume. The fourth thing that Michael Hyatt discusses is give these leaders responsibility and authority. So Jethro was very practical. He understood that a leader's span of control was about 10 people, which if you look at a bunch of different organizations, most of the time it's about 10 people that a leader is in charge of. Sometimes it's 5, sometimes it might be 20, but 10 is what Jethro suggested. And he actually established a pretty simple hierarchy with different levels of responsibility. And so here is the outline in chapter 18, verses 21 through 22. And place such over them to be rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of 50s, and rulers of 10s, and let them judge the people at all times. These levels were not designed to impede decision-making, but to facilitate it, right? So the structure and the hierarchy, like I said a minute ago, you can see this in a bunch of different organizations in the world today that very similar. So thousands, hundreds, 50s, and 10s. And ultimately it allows those people to be leaders over those smaller groups of people. And then that hierarchy makes decisions at each different level of responsibility. So, will people make mistakes? For sure. I mean, you're going to have leaders that make mistakes, that make decisions that aren't how you would make those decisions, but you're developing leaders. You're learning from that. And as long as they aren't huge, massive mistakes, typically those huge, massive mistakes will fall to the higher leaders in the organization anyway. But ultimately, it's going to help develop leaders by placing them over a small amount of people. And then as they grow, you can start to place them over larger and larger amounts of people. And then the fifth thing and final thing is only do those things which others cannot do. So Jethro said in chapter 18, verse 22, then it will be that every great matter they shall bring to you, but every small matter they themselves shall judge. So it will be easier for you, for they will bear the burden with you. So kind of like I just said, like if there's $1 million mistake that's on the line, that should be going to the leaders at the highest part of the organization. But if we're talking about smaller issues or employee disagreements, things like that, the leaders at the lower levels of the organization should be the ones that can make those decisions, while they also have the ability to come to you with suggestions on what they believe should be fixed or should be the solution to an issue, but they should at least come to you on things that maybe they can't resolve themselves. And so ultimately, only do what you can do is that fifth thing. And then lastly, Jethro concluded basically his discussion with Moses by saying, if you do this thing and God so commands you, then you will be able to endure, and all this people will also go to their place in peace. So there's two benefits that Jethro promises here: that Moses will endure. So this is going to be a sustainable strategy, a scalable, a systematic approach, and the people will be at peace. There will be fewer conflicts because they won't always have to be in line to talk to the boss, to the leader. So if you have no employees right now, it might be difficult to see, okay, there's a person over 10 people, a person over 50, etc. But you still want to start with that organizational hierarchy in mind, because then you can start to plan out how you're going to build and grow your business systematically and scale it from there. So it's a very practical section of the Bible, Exodus 18. And it's really cool to see, that Jethro came in and gave all these different suggestions that still apply today. There are other examples in the Bible too that discuss delegation and different leadership roles. So, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but just a couple of them. In the 4th chapter of 1 Kings, so 1 Kings 4, if you read that chapter, it describes those responsible for Solomon's officials. So all of his armies, his meals, taxes, etc. So it describes and lays out each person's role within that kingdom. And then in the first 18 verses of Luke 10, Jesus discusses sending out 70 people to spread the message of the gospel and to go into different towns and spread that message. So after Jesus gave them detailed instructions for what they were going to do, he sent them to preach. And most of these messengers were inexperienced and definitely far less capable than Jesus himself, but their ministry was still blessed by God. So much so that in Acts, it talks about how they turned the world upside down. So Jesus raised up leaders, kind of like we talked last week in servant leadership. Jesus raised up leaders to be able to go out and preach and spread the message of the gospel because he can't do it. He couldn't do it all himself. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that. He probably could have done it all himself, but it's not necessarily best, from spreading the message standpoint. So to have him raise up and send out 70 people at the start of his ministry, plus the 12 apostles, all of that, that's delegation that Jesus was showing through his ministry. Now, let's talk about some practical applications. Really, I've got 5 different things that I came up with that I think are the most applicable to as many different types of businesses from a biblical standpoint. So first, pray over this. If you should delegate, when you should delegate, what you should delegate, and to who or whom you should delegate. That's the first and foremost thing. You don't want to just start delegating your business and think you have to do this when God might have a different plan for you or for your business. So surrender that to God to help you make that decision. Now, the thing with that is you don't always have to be specifically right. Like it might not be one person that you have to get, but it's best to pray over that situation so God can bring the right people into the organization to help you make the right decisions and outsource and delegate properly. Second, and this is more practical from a business standpoint, so have a plan to outsource those tasks. So if you're going to start outsourcing something, what we have in our business or one of our businesses is a 4-week training schedule. So we bring somebody in, we have a 4-week training schedule. The first week, we're very hands-on. The person that is doing that task, outsourcing it to somebody else, they're working with them 100% of the time to get them used to doing that task. In the second week, they start to back off a little bit, or we would if we're the ones delegating it. You start to back off and allow that new person to have a little bit more autonomy. You're still there, you're answering questions, you're in the building with them or near them, but you aren't constantly with them while they're doing the tasks. You're doing other things. The third week, if at all possible, in our business, we don't have to be in the building. So we're out doing other tasks, whether it's out at stores or, in different areas. And so we're not with them, but we're available immediately for calls during that whole week. So we don't allow any other things to get in the way. We're there to answer any questions. And then the fourth week in our business, we give them full autonomy, but allow them to call or ask us questions if they need anything from us, but they're much more on their own, because we want to make sure that after a month, they're completely on their own and they can handle this job just as well as we need them to. So if you've got a plan to outsource tasks, and you can adjust it based off of the task you're talking about or the different things that you're trying to work in or get out of, you can start to adjust that. But for us, we like the 4-week training schedule where it's essentially 100% of the time we're with them the first week, 75% of the time we're with them the second week, or at least in the vicinity with them. The third week, it's much more off, or hands off. So we're probably there available about 30% to not feel like they're always, got us over their shoulder. And then the last week is pretty much like about 10%, we'll show up, we'll check in, we'll, be a little bit hands-on, but for the most part, we let them run the show. And then after that, they should be able to do it all by themselves. So have a plan to outsource those tasks. The third thing in the book, the E-Myth, so it's E-Myth. If you look up that book, it's very much about the entrepreneurial myth and getting out of an employee mindset and being an entrepreneur. not just a business owner, but an entrepreneur over multiple things. And so in the E-Myth, they talk about having an organization chart. Even if you're just a one-man show, or you've got 2 or 3 other people with you, maybe create an organizational chart for your business that shows all the different activities that happen in your business, right? So for our main business, we sell on Amazon.com and other e-commerce marketplaces. So we would have something that would show, obviously like a CEO level, so the management levels, and then we would have a prep and ship team. And from that prep and ship team, we might have a boxer, a prepper and shipper, somebody that checks in items, somebody that handles returns, et cetera. And we would list out this organizational chart that shows all of those different items. And right now, if you're a one-person show, you would put your name in all of those boxes in that organizational chart. But the ultimate goal is you're going to start at the bottom of that chart, all the lower level activities, and start removing your name and adding other people into that chart. Because that allows you to have a visual representation of everything that you do in your business, everything that happens in your business, and everything that ultimately you can start to outsource in your business. And then you slowly go up that ladder as everything on the bottom of the chart gets filled up with other people. And it might be one person that handles a lot of that stuff. But as that gets filled up, then you start moving up the rung and adding in other people. And it could be that you're promoting from within, raising up leaders, and then having that bottom rung constantly filled in with other new people. But ultimately, it'll give you that visual representation. So you're going to fill those spots from the bottom up to the top of that organizational chart. And then I think that you should also have a day scheduled in your calendar, or at least a period of time in your calendar. I typically suggest Friday afternoons, where you can sit down, think about all the different tasks that you do in your business, and create a backlog of different systems that you should be creating while you're doing those. I know this is a lot to cover in a podcast from a delegation standpoint for people, and then how do you really outsource those tasks? Typically, my suggestion is to build out your systems and trainings while you're doing them. So you can either record it and have it converted by a virtual assistant to a PDF later, a written document, or you can create the written document while you're doing computer tasks and just literally screenshot and write down every single task that you're doing during that time period, and build out the system for, whether it's in our business, it'd be repricing or prep and ship or handling returns. We would have a different system for each thing. And so if you start doing that on Friday afternoons and have a backlog of different activities you do in your business based off of that organizational chart, then that will give you an idea of the different things that need to be built out so that you can outsource them easily or more easily in the future. And then the last thing, which we saw in the Bible, in the Jethro example, that only do what only you can do. This is something that you should always keep in mind, that you should just not be doing tasks that can be easily outsourced to other people. Most of the time in your business, you should be focusing on the higher level tasks, whether it's growing the company or it's looking at different markets, or it's, in our business, it could be sourcing or shopping for new products, which could be hundreds of dollars an hour in profit that we could make. So if we're spending time on a $15 an hour task of somebody prepping and shipping, well, then that's losing money, and it's a waste of time when somebody else could have a job and, be able to do that task as well, if not better than you. So focus on, or only do what only you can do in your organization. So that's everything I have for this podcast. Let me know your thoughts in the Facebook group. Again, you can go to facebook.com and look up Biblical Business Leaders, or you can click the link that's in the description to get to that Facebook group and join it. It's a free group. Once you answer some questions, we'll let you in. And it's an awesome place to be in, to fellowship. So let me know your thoughts on it. And if you'd like me to cover more in depth on some of the system creation or even some of the delegation, please let me know that too. I'm happy to do multiple episodes on similar topics if that's what's needed. So thank you all for being here. I pray that you be a blessing this week with everyone you come into contact with, and start thinking about different ways that God would want you to delegate and organize your business so that you can grow and scale and bless more people ultimately. So have a blessed week, and I will see you next time.